Hey, how we doing, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bulls Roundtable. Today, we are joined by the man himself, Tyler Metcalf from No Ceilings NBA. I mean, he needs no introduction. You guys know who he is if you're here. So, how you doing today, Tyler?
Fellas, I'm fantastic. Ready to talk some hoops. Ready to talk a little bit of draft. Little
Yes,
Chicago
sir.
Bulls, who I am perplexed by on a daily basis. So happy to be here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Absolutely, Michael. How you doing, man?
Good, good. Really want to say thank you to Tyler for joining. I think I'm very vocal on Twitter. I'm not shy at all about No Ceilings is probably my favorite draft content by far. Every year for years, these guys have been getting me ready for the draft before I even actually knew them or talked to them. Shout out to Corey, who has been doing awesome work, great interview series for years. So just love the work they do. Really excited to ask Tyler some questions I've been dying to talk to these guys about. And also, quick shout out to Kurtz, who also is joining us today.
Hmm.
Appreciate you guys having me on again. And I'm pumped, man. Those feelings is great. I love hopping in there, asking you guys some questions about some of these prospects whenever they come up, and you guys always hit back with some good answers. So I'm excited for this one.
Absolutely. So we got our guy. Shout out, Mr. Kelder. Mr. Kelder, Tyler, that's a character. I know, like sometimes we'll at you and tell you to come in a Discord. If you ever see Kelder, is always right there. He's a true character. But so we'll get to these questions. Shout out to you, Kelder. Shout out to my boy Monk. We got Brums. He's already coming in with the Morris Johnson question, so that'll be good. And shout out to you, Sammy. Thanks for coming in. But yeah, Mike, as always, man, I'm gonna let you steer the ship here.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tyler said he is perpetually perplexed by the Bulls, so join the
Same.
club. As someone who is following the team on a daily basis, watching every single game. Obviously, a lot going on. I will say they made a little bit of sense for the first time in a long time, in the sense that they needed to take a step back, whatever that means for where they were in the first place. But they clearly did that by kind of tearing things down this year. Whether or not the results of that are really good or worth it is up to the eye of the beholder there. They do sit ninth in the lottery odds as of now, so I believe it's about a 20% chance to jump into that top four. If anybody watches the Bulls closely, they know that they are third in the league in pace. They want to play fast. They want to take a lot of threes. They want to have a modern shot profile. They don't play a lot of defense. They're not very good at offense, despite the fact that they have that modern shot profile. But they have put a bigger focus on getting to the paint, getting to the free throw line this year, which does bode well for bringing a high level prospect into that environment. So I just want to start off, Tyler, if the Bulls were to jump into that top four, everyone has their favorites. Everyone really has, I think, that 3-4 spot kind of differentiated. But just from what you see of this team, obviously, all we know at the very least is Josh Giddey and Montas Buzelis are kind of functioning as your two high level creators there outside of this new guy. Who among that top four group first do you think the Bulls would be like over the moon to get, would really fit into what they're trying to do as a team right now, from what you see?
Yeah, and so, so just fair warning. I've had Darren Peterson at one on my board from start to finish. That's not going to change.
Nice.
And I think if you jump to the number one spot, I think regardless of who you are, I think you swing on him because I think for me, he's the best player in this class. I also have AJ DeBonson in that same tier at number two. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Bulls, and having either of those guys inserting that legitimate offensive hub that you can really run your offense through. I think it makes a lot of sense because I feel like they don't have that go-to score yet.
No.
Obviously, the pace and the athleticism that Giddey and Buzelis provide is awesome, but I think they're more in complementary roles with how they can facilitate for others, how they can clean up in transition, crash the offensive glass. Buzelis's jumper is still a work in progress, and we're not really getting a whole lot of playmaking from him. Darren's not a point guard. I cannot be more clear about that, as despite some of the narratives that were trying to be pushed coming into the year, he's not a point guard. He is a legit two guard, but the playmaking that you can get from him, I think, is more of like the Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards-esque kind of stuff where you can use him off ball, maximize his scoring gravity, and then create for others out of that. So playing off of a guy like Giddey who can get to the rim a ton, a guy like Buzelis who can get to the rim a ton, collapse the defense, attack rotations from the second side. I think Darren Peterson makes a ton of sense. But then even just scaling down to like the forwards, Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson, like you can't go wrong with these guys, and especially with the athleticism and the pace and the defensive versatility that the Bulls have been trying to play with. man, it's tough to look at Caleb Wilson and not get really excited about what he could look like in that system.
Yeah, it's something I just wrote about recently, specifically Caleb Wilson. I kind of been going through all those top 4 guys, and Wilson and Buzelis, when you think about trying to be like the Celtics and have those 2 forwards that you just build around forever, it kind of makes a lot of sense when you think about Matas and Wilson kind of being able to switch, guard a variety of guys, provide a little bit of help side defense depending on what type of center you want to trot out there. So it does look very promising for them if they can jump into that top 4. I do want to touch back on Peterson just because if you get the number 1 pick, obviously you can't get it wrong. That's the whole thing. You got to make the right pick. And I'm still in the process of going through things. I'm not no ceiling, so I probably can get to 14, 16 before I get a little tapped out. So I'm doing my best here. But right now, among the top 5 guys, I pretty much my 1-2 is pretty set. Debansta, then Peterson. So I am curious, just for me, it all comes into, if I think you're going to be a high-level creator, you're a guy who's going to be the engine of an offense. Can you also provide that two-way versatility where you're going to be a defensive high-level player as well? Obviously, with AJ, you can just look at him, you see the size. Even if he's not really putting up much defensively in terms of steals, blocks, his defensive blocks plus minus isn't as high as some of these other guys. You can project just looking at him physically what type of defender he can be. With Peterson, he has very long arms for a guy who projects to be a traditional 2 guard. So I do see him growing into that role. But for me, that's where the having AJ slightly ahead is just defensively. So I do just want to hear from you. What is it between those two where Peterson, is it just his offense is such a step above to you, even from an AJ? I'm just curious, where the distinction for 1 and 2, and I know it's not a big gap, it's top 2, but I was just curious to hear your reasoning there.
Yeah, and for me on the offensive end, I think obviously Darren is by far the better shooter. I think he's a much better passer, but we didn't really get to see any of that at Kansas this year because of the injury, because of his role. They really used him as purely an off-ball guard and let Melvin Council do the bulk of the creation, and then Elmarco Jackson a little bit as well towards the end of the year. But we didn't get the playmaking that we got from Darren at Prolific. So I know not everyone loves leaning a lot on the high school sample, but we saw Darren look like one of the best playmakers in this freshman class going against top competition. He wasn't playing some rural public school type of high school games. He was going against AJ and Cam and these top tier guys, Nate Ament. He was playing the best high school programs in the country, and he was consistently running the pick and roll and creating for others. Now, in that same realm, I think what we saw from AJ growing as a playmaker from their preseason game against Nebraska, where he was a disaster as a passer, to what it grew into at the end of the year, night and day difference. And that's what you want to really see from these guys. Weirdly enough, though, I thought AJ had the potential to be one of the best wing defenders in this class coming in to the season. I loved how he defended in his senior year with Utah Prep. He was constantly taking the toughest assignments. We saw it in FIBA as well, and he was just a menace. You're sitting down in his stance, sliding his feet, being really physical, being super competitive on that end. And at BYU, it just disappeared this year. So it's almost like the inverse with AJ's defense. I loved it coming into the year, kind of hated it throughout this year at BYU. Peterson loved his playmaking coming into the year, hated it throughout this entire year at Kansas. But when you look at AJ, he has a defensive BPM of 1.1, a block rate of 1.1, a steal rate of 1.7. Conversely, with Peterson, defensive BPM of 4.0, block rate of 2.3, steal rate of 2.9. I know those can be a little misleading at times, but even when you just watch him, Darren's so much more active on that end of the floor, has to clean up some of the consistency stuff. But at 6'9", those are really, really poor numbers for AJ.
And I think you kind of touched on something naturally I wanted to move to. You mentioned how you don't want to always say, rely on the high school tape too much, because obviously we're looking at what guys are doing lately, what they're up to now. But Cam Boozer, who I'm a huge Duke fan for anyone who knows me personally, love Duke through and through. Won't talk about what happened this year in the tournament because it happened. Shout out to Braylon Mullins. But Cam, my thing with Cam, he's been at 4 for a long time for me. Finally moved him to 3. Think he's just going to stay there because my top 4 is pretty set. Offensively, I just think there's enough feel there that even if worst case scenario, he's going to be a decent contributor to your team. Where I wanted to talk about the high school tape with Cam, he seems like such a dramatically different player in the sense that I think he's strictly going to be a 4, maybe can play some small ball center and stretches. But in high school, he looked like a guy who was maybe playing more of a hybrid 3-4, could really move, was pretty agile. And it seems like in Duke, he like bulked up a lot. I don't know if it was like natural genes of a boozer or if he really was packing on the pounds intentionally to try to prepare to play NBA center. But I'm curious, Tyler, just like what you think in terms of how Cam looked in high school to how he looked at Duke and how he projects at the NBA. Are we looking at 3 different guys? Is he a mix of these two? Like, what do I do with Cam Boozer? Because I think he's going to be a good player, but I still don't really know what I think he will do at the next level, if you get what I mean.
I'm in the exact same boat. I've gone to hell and back with my eval of him because like just throughout he's arguably the most decorated and productive high school basketball player ever. All he's ever done is win every award, every tournament, every title he could, and he carried that over to Duke. Like there's really no fall off in his production. And when you look at his statistical profile at Duke, and he basically like comes through as a guard with his assist rate, his usage, his scoring efficiency, and then you factor in the fact that he's 6'9", 250. It's like, what in the world do I do with this? The shot has continued to improve. I know recently there's been some nitpicking with, he doesn't really have a mid-range game. It's like, well, the guy lived in the mid-range in high school. I think that was more of a schematic thing where it's like, hey, Cam, you're drawing a billion fouls a game. Go to the rim because no one's as strong as you, despite you being 18, 19 years old. So I really struggle with him because stylistically, like aesthetically, it's not a pretty game. Like some of the passing and stuff is really gorgeous. Some of the footwork can be really nice, but he's an old school bruiser, kind of point A to point B type of guy. There's not a whole lot of wiggle, kind of stiff, but it's never mattered. And I don't know what to do with it because it's just all he ever does is produce and win. My biggest hangups come on the defensive end because, like you were alluding to, in high school, he was sliding his feet. He was sticking with guards. He was shifty in space. Like he's never been and never will be a good rim protector. He's just not explosive enough, and he'll never be a 5 in the NBA. He's just not big enough or explosive enough. But what was really disappointing this year at Duke was like his feet looked heavy. Like he looked, the way he was moving side to side looked way bigger than 250, and that does worry me because he can get away with it in high school. He should have been able to get away with it in college. Again, how much of it is scheme because they were just kind of putting him in the paint a lot and being like, hey, just don't get into foul trouble. Just sit down here and close out when needed. But his footwork sucked on the defensive end this year. I kind of hope he like leans down a little bit to 235, 240 in the NBA, get some of that lateral quickness back. But then the Sophie's choice of that is, well, what does that do to his offensive game that's so reliant on power and strength and ability to fend off anyone? So I really struggle with him. And I've toyed with swapping him and Caleb Wilson at 3 and 4. I just can't get there because at the end of the day, the numbers are just constantly historically good.
And that's kind of the same struggle I've been with. Now I'm obsessed with space on the floor, 3-point shooting. Yeah. Probably why I put Boozer a little ahead of Wilson with that not being part of Wilson's game. But of course, he can learn to shoot. I do want to touch on with Boozer on that shot. I think he was shooting like 39% from 3 on pretty low volume, I want to say. As someone who's watched him for a while, is that something you think he legitimately does project to be like a pick and pop guy, a space the floor guy, or is it tough to say off of the small sample size at Duke?
Yeah, and he's at like 6.5 attempts per 100. I think like just under 140 attempts total on the year. You'd love it to be higher, but it's not like it was nothing. And the way that we've seen his jumper improve from just over like the last 2 years, like if you go back to his junior year, he's got like a ton of loft in it. Like the arc is like over exaggerated. It's really slow. It's really mechanical. And every year it's gotten a little more fluid. The arc's gotten closer to where it needs to be. So I don't think he's ever going to be a consistent on ball pull up, dynamic creator, but spot up guy, pick and pop type of stuff, trail threes. If he can get to 3, and he's probably going to be like the 5 attempts a game type of range at his peak would be my guess. And if he's in that 38 to 39% range, I don't know if you could really ask for much more.
Yeah, I mean, especially if he's still going to get to the rim or at least give you a decent free throw rate.
And
would
like
make
all the
some sense
passing stuff, like, and
on
you
top
put
of
him in
that.
the middle of the floor, he's finding anyone on the court.
And as we sort of move on, I think maybe let's move a little bit down the board. I want to say everyone expects the worst for the Bulls when it comes to the draft lottery. We're just conditioned to expect that. So let's just say, they're sitting in that 9 to 10 range. There's probably going to be a lot more interesting options there. If they get the Portland Trailblazers pick, which I believe is lottery protected, a lot more interesting options as well there. But let's just assume they only had one draft pick and it was in the 9 to 10 range. Some of the names I start to think of there, it's mostly a lot of guards who I'm not sure, with Josh Giddey and Buzelis, who I do think fit well next to star type prospects. I'm not sure if they fit as well to just like other good starter type prospects, depending on the type of fit. But some guys who really interest me, Braden Burries from Arizona. Obviously, if Keaton Wagler from Illinois was to slip in that range. But just sticking with one of them for now, just with Wagler, I think he obviously is such a great offensive prospect. Defensively, I didn't feel like I saw a lot that I loved, but he does have the size despite being a skinny guy. Is there any world where you think putting him next to a player like Josh Giddey yields such positive results offensively that you can live with the defense? Or by your evaluation, is that just sort of a disaster waiting to happen?
It's a little tricky. I love Wagler. I think the offensive stuff, I think, with him is so impressive. I get that he's not explosive. It'd be awesome if he had more than 0 dunks on the year, and could get to the rim whenever he wanted, and wasn't really skinny. But he's one of like the few freshmen this year that actually looks like an 18-year-old. It's like, oh yeah, no, this guy was in high school last year. That makes sense. So like once he gets like a full year or two of NBA strength and conditioning, I think he's going to be an absolute menace to deal with, because even though he is a little more slender right now, it didn't affect him at all. Like he plays super tough. He is constantly throwing out multiple dribble combos and counters to whatever defensive scheme is thrown at him. And he was learning so fast. So offensively, I think whatever he gives you is going to be able to outweigh the defensive concerns. He's not a great defender. I do think a lot of that is just the strength deficiency at this point. But you'd like to see the steal numbers be a little higher. You'd like to see the block numbers be a little higher. He's just not a great athlete, so he's always going to be a little more limited on that end of the floor. But offensively, I think him playing next to Buzelis and Giddey makes a lot of sense too, because he can play off ball. He has the size to be a two guard if needed. He's a good shooter off the catch, and then even if he's just acting as that second side creator, there's a ton of value in him being able to either knock down spot up jumpers, push in transition, or run that second side pick and roll, and be a real menace there. So I think offensively, I like the fit. Defensively, I'm not sure I love the fit with him anywhere, just because of those inherent limitations that he's probably just always going to have.
I can get that. He's a guy right now. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm struggling with right now in the early stage. I think I have him 5th on my board, just because when I'm looking at best case scenarios for these guys, I think Wagler's a good enough creator in the pick and roll that there are some really good high end scenarios. Like when I really, really sit down, if you squint very, 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 very hard, I see like a very poor, like I'm talking extremely poor man's SGA. I see the getting to the rim. I see him sort of slinking through the lane. He gets to the free throw line a ton. I can see him being one of those guys who is going to annoy people with how much he's getting to the free throw line for a guy who's not exactly exploding to the basket. So I like everything about his game. So I think he's going to have some high level outcomes. I mentioned Burries from Arizona. I think I popped in to ask you guys in the No Ceiling sort of chat about him, because I struggle with him because he reminds me of Derek White a lot when I'm watching him play. But the thing I don't get is like defensively, he's 6'4", I believe. He looks pretty stocky, so I assume he can maybe guard up. Is he a guy who is going to be able to guard wings, you think, at the NBA level? Is he strictly a 2? Like, I think Burries kind of reminds me of Cam Boozer in the sense that, like, I think he's going to be successful in the NBA because he's good at everything, but I'm not like this guy does that. So sort of what do you see his role being at the next level?
I think more that 1-2 combo guard type of role. I really wish he was like 6'5", 6'6". That would be awesome. Hopefully his measurements come back with like a +4 wingspan or something that's like, oh, okay, this can make guarding threes a little more tenable, because the dude is strong. Like he is built. Now he is a little older for a freshman. I think he'll be 20 on draft night or by the season start. So he is a little older for a freshman, but he's super tough, really consistent, and he's one of those like Swiss Army knife type of point guards or guards where is he really going to run the show consistently? Probably not. Is he going to be the lethal spot up shooter, dynamic off ball scorer? Probably not. Can he do a little bit of all of it? Yeah. And that's where that's where the projection with him gets a little funky. I always struggle with those guys because I love them, but I also get in a lot of trouble like overrating them just because it's like, oh, what can't this guy do? And then it's like, oh, well, anything at an elite level. So I think his toughness and his strength is going to make up for him only being 6'4" on the defensive end. And then it's a bummer that he ended his season on such a bad shooting night against Michigan in the tournament. But that's kind of who he's always been as a shooter, where it's really streaky. When it's good, it is good, like take over a game good. But then he'll go through a game or two where he's 2 of 10, 2 of 12, 1 of 8 from 3, and it really falls apart. So I'm like a couple of the names that I've kind of been using at like stylistic comps. You mentioned Derek White. That's one I have down too. And then AJ Mitchell, I think he reminds me a lot of where is he a superstar? No. But do you feel really confident having him on the court and asking him to basically do whatever you need? Yeah.
Nice. Kurt, you got some thoughts on Wagler?
I liked what you said at the end when we were talking about Wagler, where you said like the offensive fit is nice, but the defensive fit might be a little questionable. I think that's where a lot of these prospects seem to struggle, specifically in regards to how they fit on the Bulls. I think over the past couple of seasons, it's very clear to see that Josh Giddey can kind of fit with anybody offensively and make you look good on offense. He did it with Kobe, Sakh, made Vooch look pretty good for an old man. So I think what the Bulls really need are some guys capable of playing both ways. And I think Burries is a good example of a guy who you could probably slide in next to Giddey, who would benefit from playing on the offensive end next to Josh, but also make up for a little bit of those defensive weaknesses. Whereas I don't think a guy like Keaton Wagler makes up for enough of the defensive deficiencies. So I was wondering if you had any prospects on the board that either play maybe the 2 or a 3-4 next to Amatis, who are two-way players that you think could fill that role and play good defense on a Bulls team.
Oh boy, I like Burries probably like among the guards. Especially that top group of guards. He's probably my favorite defensively, just because of like that physical strength. Kingston Flemings is more disruptive, really good hands, ton of deflections, but a little more slender. So like when you're looking at that top group or clumping of guards with Acuff, Wagler, Flemings, Burries, God, there are a lot of them. Phylon. Burries defensively would probably be my favorite. If we're looking at like 3-4s specifically, exclusively on the defensive end, and guys like Thomas Houck make a lot of sense. If you're in like that 9, 10, 11 range, it might be a little bit of a reach just because I think he's going to be a 23-year-old or 22-year-old rookie. There are some concerns over the shooting still. He rocks, though. I know NBA teams are a lot higher on him than the internet seems to be. Dalen Swain, I think, is another guy where if you're looking to play with pace, get another wing who can really handle the ball, get to the rim, facilitate for others. I think he's someone, especially in a watered down role from what he had at Texas this year. We're going to see that defense jump back up in a big, big way because his first 2 years at Xavier, he was a nasty, nasty defender. Like that was his game. And then this year at Texas, he took all of the offensive creation load and was awesome at it. But we saw the defense scale down because he kind of has to. Because you only have so much energy. But I think Dalen Swain at this point would probably be one of my favorite toolsy, versatile 3-4 type of guys because the wing, this wing class and this perimeter defender class, it's not good. Like there's a very, very steep drop off after those top couple guys. So if that's the archetype you're looking for, you're probably gonna have to pull the trigger on and potentially, quote unquote, reach on a guy like Swain at 9 or 10, but there are some people who have him even higher.
You mentioned, or at least I've seen a couple comments, at least about some guys who I don't think had necessarily the best year, especially in evaluators. I feel like I've seen some of these names sliding, some going up, but I just wanted to mention two guys who I feel like have the potential to maybe be better at the NBA level than they were in college. And then I need you to tell me why I'm ridiculously wrong or right on the money. But Braylon Mullins, I feel like had an interesting year for a freshman trying to fit in on a UConn team. Obviously had the huge shot that a lot of people saw. Had an interesting tournament. Still didn't do anything explosive. Think was maybe trying to fit in. And then another name, Nate Ament, obviously been all over the place, had a little bit of a weird year. Still think defensively he projects to be interesting at the NBA level, even though I'm not sure how much we saw at Tennessee. Between either of those two guys, do you think either one of them have a good chance of playing better at the NBA level than we kind of saw them their freshman year?
Yeah, weird freshman seasons from both of them. Mullins, I like a little more, I think, maybe, looking at my board. They're like neck and neck. But like Mullins came into the season being billed as this elite nasty shooter, and he was just he was just okay. But my bigger concern with him was that he was like in the 6th percentile in at rim shot frequency, which is tough. So like his entire offense was perimeter oriented. Some of that was teammates not finding him on back cuts, but the guy has legit athleticism. He's got serious bounce, and he didn't show it at all, which is really shocking in that Connecticut system that relies so much on back cuts and off ball movement. That was an area I thought he was going to really thrive. I do think he has some ability to attack closeouts and create off the bounce as that tertiary guy that he didn't get to show this year, but it's still a big weakness. He's never going to break anyone down in isolation. Defensively, though, that dude rocks. Like, he moves his feet. He is competitive. He's an awesome defender, just needs to get a little stronger. The big concern, though, is aside from the on-ball stuff, hearing a lot of skepticism that he's not the 6'6" that he's listed at and is a little closer to 6'4". So that there's concern about what does that do to his game. Really like him, though. Really intrigued to see if he really stays in this draft. I think he could be a guy who's a big time riser during the pre-draft stuff. You put him in an empty gym, he's going to shoot the cover off the ball and force NBA execs to fall in love with him. Nate Ament is a guy that I've really struggled with and thought a lot of the preseason hype did a disservice to him when people were trying to push the agenda of, no, this guy could go one. It's like, no, he can't. The size is awesome. I desperately need people to stop comparing anyone who's 6'9" or taller and kind of skinny to Kevin Durant. Just there is not another Kevin Durant. He is a one of one. Let's stop it because it's not fair to the 19-year-old who you're throwing that expectation on. And the big concern with Nate is that he can't really create anything for himself. At his size, he can shoot over anyone, but he didn't shoot well at all this year. 33% from 3, 43% from 2. Effective field goal rate of 45.2. It's just rough. And the bulk of his production came from drawing fouls in the mid-range. He had this awesome month stretch towards the end of the regular season where it's like, oh, this is Nate. Like, this is a guy that we were hoping to see. He's playing defense. He's moving the ball. He's getting to the line. He's being super aggressive, getting downhill. And then it just disappeared again once we got into the tournament. There's some nagging injuries he was dealing with. I get that. But there was so much inconsistency and kind of passivity where the preseason reports of him putting on 15 to 20 pounds of muscle over the summer, that's great. He never played like that, though. He was still playing like the really skinny high schooler that we saw throughout his high school film, where he was really slender, didn't know how to play slow, how to utilize that strength to create shots. And so much of his on-ball creation was just him turning over his left shoulder and trying to shoot over a guy. You can get away with that at lower levels, but really tough to do in the NBA consistently. So I if he hits, when you look in the late lottery range to mid first round, he's by far, in my eyes, the biggest lottery ticket, where if you strike gold on him, he could be a heck of a player. There's a lot to go with there, but I think a lot of it is still the idea of what he could be. And I think he's still a good ways away from the tangible production that we hope from that type of guy. If he really hones in on the film school and looks at guys like Chris Middleton, who can play that bully ball in the mid-range, who can play slow, create for others, and get his shots like an old man, I think he could be absolutely nasty. But if he tries to be KD, I get really worried about it.
Metcalf. So how do you feel about this? Like I've seen this argument come up before, but like how do you feel about the use of like player comps, you know, like comping players to certain players, or even I know like you guys, how do you feel about the ceiling conversation? I mean, you're literally no ceilings, but like a guy on Disputed, like he says he hates when people use that because they think that, you know, ceilings and all that is made up. But like how do you feel about that, like from the creator of No Ceilings himself?
Yeah, and it's tough because it all depends on what is the intention of the comp. Is the intention be like, nope, it's 1-for-1, he's going to be this Hall of Famer? It's like, okay, well, I hate that regardless of who you're talking about. But if you're talking about stylistically and pieces of a game, and, you know, blending a couple guys together just to try and get a picture of how can this guy contribute on the court, what does his game ultimately look like, then I think they're really important. Because if you are trying to sell me a guy and I ask you, all right, well, who is he in the league? How does he get minutes? How does he make an impact? And you can't give me a name. That either tells me he's a bunch of guys who never panned out, or he is a one of one. So which one is it? There's not a whole lot of middle ground there. Using them online and using them in writing and whatnot can get really tricky, because if I just go out on Twitter, be like, man, Darren Peterson looks like Kobe. It's like, well, that's not going to go well for me. I'm going to get torched here. But like when it's like, oh, there's some movement stuff here that reminds me of Kobe and Ray Allen, and the way that he can get to a shot and really be that off-ball secondary facilitator like we see from Ant and Booker, and you can provide some nuance, something the internet isn't its best at, then I think there's a lot of value to be gained from that. But if you just throw out Nate Amen's KD, it's like, well, you lose me immediately.
Yeah, you got to get used to the internet not having nuance at this point. I did see at the beginning.
You think I would at this point, but
at the beginning of our stream, we had someone say Metcalf's talking about Cam Boozer being a winner. Isn't that a little early for a 19-year-old? And I was like, he was just listing off actual facts. Like at that point, you hadn't even gotten into opinion yet. You were just talking about Boozer winning. So people get worked up about this stuff, but that's why we love it. And speaking of that getting worked up, I was dying to ask you about this one. At No Ceilings, and I think a few other places, but you guys were one of the first two for sure that I saw had the Bulls in a mock draft, staying at 9 overall, taking Ade Mara, the starting center from Michigan. Super intriguing player. Haven't figured out where he kind of factors in for me at all. I'm assuming he'll be a late lottery guy just because there's not a lot of bigs I like in this class overall. 7'3", massive guy, obviously blocks shots. Offensively, he was intriguing to me in the fact that he can pass a little bit, and isn't as old as I would, he's normal. I think he's like 21, so still got something to work with. What I wanted to ask about Mara is more of a stylistic, I guess, NBA question. Is he someone, Metcalf, that you do project to see as being like a starting center in the NBA? Or is he always just going to be that kind of nice change of pace off the bench big? Because he's someone where 9 overall, I think I could live with the Bulls taking that swing, because again, if this guy's your starting center, he's 7'3", self-explanatory. You're going to roll with that skill set offensively. But if he's a change of pace big, obviously 9 overall, you're making a huge commitment. So I'm just curious, like obviously he won the title. He's fresh in everyone's mind. What do you think about his transition to the NBA?
I'm fascinated to see how it goes. And I am a Michigan fan. So coming into the year, I hated this dude. Because he was getting hyped up as like, oh, this guy's going to be the top pick. And then he's getting like 90 seconds a game for UCLA as a freshman. And then everyone's taking his per 40 minutes out of a sample size of 20 minutes on the year and be like, oh, this guy's a superstar. It's like, that's not how numbers work, folks. So like, it's always been really low sample size, really low involvement, consistency. And his time at UCLA wasn't good, despite what some of the extrapolated numbers would tell you. And so coming into Michigan, I'm like, God, this guy's soft. And a lot of the reports that I was hearing from his work ethic and that kind of stuff weren't glowing. It wasn't good. Looked like a totally different player this year. And the way that he moved in space, the way that he transformed his body, and just played so much tougher than what we saw the previous 2 years. It was like, holy cow, what happened? Like, what was going on in LA that caused that? Because this is someone totally different. This is the guy that we saw, for Spain and FIBA U17s 3-4 years ago. This guy rocks. He looks incredible. The scoring touch on the floaters is really fun. The drop step spin move, like his feet are so much quicker and lighter than they should be for a guy that size, especially on the offensive end. His hands when he's catching above his shoulders, really good on lobs, awesome passer for his size, a monster on the boards. The hands below the shoulders kind of suck. So like pocket passes, not good. If he brings it down in the post, not good. And that's a big issue with his short roll playmaking. So it's going to be really curious to see how that continues to grow. Where I get some concerns is, and what you asked specifically, is he a starting center? Where I have a little hesitation about that. The minute share wasn't totally there throughout this year. So first 2 years, he barely played at all. This year, minute share at just 58.3% for Michigan, much better. But it really speaks to some of the conditioning issues that we naturally see in guys that big. We saw it in Alabama where he was getting kind of gassed. Alabama tends to do that to a lot of bigs, but NBA teams play fast. He also was a little prone to getting in foul trouble. How does that skew things? And then the free throw shooting for the bulk of this year was horrendous. So it got better down the stretch. He ended up getting, the bulk of the year, it was like sub 50%. And he ended up getting it up to 56.4%. So it did improve as the year went on. But if those things, 56 is still almost unplayable. So if those things continue to be an issue, his crunch time viability is really questionable. But in a vacuum, I think the offensive skills, the defensive growth, how he moves in space on the defensive end, and the rim protection, it's what you would hope to see from your starting center. But I still think that there are major leaps in his game that he has to take.
And it sounds like conditioning might be one of his biggest hurdles, which certainly in Chicago would be an interesting dilemma.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I think, can we stay on the topic of Michigan for a while? You're talking about,
Absolutely.
You're a Michigan fan. They've got 2 more guys in the draft this year who both project to be very good two-way players in Yaxel Lendenborg and Merez Johnson Jr. Let's start with Merez. For starters, where do you think he's going to fall in the draft? Where do you kind of see him falling as a NBA center? Maybe he develops a 4 if that 3 ball is real. But just talk a little bit about Merez for us.
I love this dude. I've had him as a top 10 guy for basically going back to January. And I think when we did our preseason hot take episode, one of mine was that Merez was going to be the first Michigan player drafted in this draft. He's so good. And the offensive growth that we've seen from him, not just from his freshman year at Illinois to this year, but even going back to his high school stuff, the shot has grown so much. And the shooting touch and the free throw indicators, it's all exactly what you want to see from a big man. I don't think he's ever going to be a high volume floor spacer, but as an occasional pick and pop trail 3 type of guy who can knock down 1, maybe 2 a game from the top of the arc, like we've seen from Isaiah Stewart, like we saw from Al Horford, that's the kind of shooter and floor spacer I see him as. But the big selling point with him is the rebounding on both ends of the floor and the defense, because at 6'9", 250, the guy moves his feet like he's a ballerina. He is constantly switching with guards. He is constantly picking up point of attack. Him and Yaxel were picking up opposing point guards full court for the bulk of the year. They're switching everything in the pick and roll. On the defensive end, he's not like this prolific shot blocker, but there really isn't anything that he can't do out there. I think in some small ball lineups, he can play 5, but he's probably mostly just a 4. So you're probably going to want to find some sort of floor spacing big to pair with him. Sounds super easy, I know. And that does make roster construction a little difficult, but the pace that Chicago plays at, he's going to be fine with. He can really eat up rebounds on both ends. And the fact that he was on the court with the Dimara and Yaxel Lendenborg as much as he was, and still had a offensive and defensive rebounding rates of 12.8 and 18.9 is awesome. And they're really similar to what he showed as a freshman playing with Ivasic and some real size at Illinois as well. So I'm head over heels for Mrez. It doesn't seem like the rest of the community at large has caught up to that stance, and Michigan's throwing out some promo material for season ticket holders next year that has Mrez on it. So we'll see if he actually declares or not. He kind of seems like he might be in the similar boat to Yaxel last year, where it's like, all right, if I'm getting like a top 20 feedback, I'm going. If not, I'm fine returning. So I'm really fat. I would take him top 10.
Nice.
I think he's going to be the best big in this class, not classifying Boozer or Caleb as bigs, but he's the top big on my board. And then Yaxel is more of that really toolsy player who I've struggled with a lot this year. Because at the start of the year, it's like, all right, well, I love that he's scaling down, being more of that complementary role player and filling in where needed. You love to see that after being the heliocentric offensive hub at UAB. It's like, all right, this guy has layers to his game. He can take over when needed. He can step aside and let others cook and fill in when needed. But then that passivity kind of maintained a little longer than you would hope. And then in January, he was dealing with a calf issue, and the shot totally fell off a cliff where once we got out of January, and he was over 40% from three going into January, coming out of January, he's under 30% from three. He's like, oh my God, what happened? But he was dealing with a calf injury. So how much was that really affecting things? Hopefully a lot, because he still ended up finding his rhythm, getting back into the mid to high 30s from three on the year. And he's just one of these guys. It's like he probably should warrant lottery top 10 pick because of how good the production and how versatile the production has been this year, last year, the year before, and how much he's improved in such a short amount of time as well. But the NBA constantly tells us what they value, and it is not 23, 24-year-old rookies. So I'm fascinated to see where he falls, where he lands. He's a really good player who I think is really malleable, can fit pretty much anywhere because of that two-way versatility, but is a mediocre to bad team going to look at a 23, 24-year-old rookie and be like, yeah, that's who we want to kickstart this rebuild with? Or is he going to fall to a playoff team and make them look really, really smart?
Interesting. Yeah. We've been having a lot of discussions lately in the Discord as well about the idea of a 23-year-old rookie. We've been talking about the difference between rookies coming out as 19-year-olds to 20, or if they stay in college for a little bit longer for development purposes. Do you think, or do you see it as a problem that the NBA has where a lot of these kids are coming out early and they're not ready to come out, so they're falling out of the cycle of the NBA rather quickly? And do you think more people should be staying in college longer?
It's been a big issue that I think NIL has inadvertently helped kind of fix. There'll always be guys who are just like, I hate college. Just I want to get on with my life and try and get on with my career and go play ball exclusively. That's always going to be a thing. But I think NIL has made that decision for a lot of guys who are on the fence of like, man, I might not be ready, but I can't do this another year of college. I think that's helped a lot. But one of my big struggles with when draft Twitter, or, people on the internet constantly push some of these freshmen who may not be ready and be like, no, he has to be a top 20 pick. And all this NBA team has to do is, really develop him and nurture him and put the time in. It's like, no one has the patience for that. You think an NBA coach, like these guys are getting fired every other week. They're not going to put their career up to this raw 19-year-old and live through the pain. Unless you're a really bad team and you have very clear mandate from ownership of like, hey, you're good. Like we've seen with Washington and Utah and, all of these tanking teams where it's like, you're good. Like just play this guy. Like we will not punish you for it. But then like you look at Minnesota, it's like Leonard Miller had no idea what he was doing on the basketball court. He couldn't pay Chris Finch to put him on the court. And there's a good reason for that because Minnesota has title aspirations and guys like Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller weren't doing anything to help that. And then when you don't see that, the improvement that you needed, like mistakes happen, but when you don't see guys learn from it and improve on it as quickly as you need them to, based on where that team is, It's a real struggle, and it's a really easy way for guys to get buried on the bench because so many of these guys, the holes in their game, we can always talk about, oh, he needs to improve as a shooter. He needs to improve as a defender. Like the toughness and strength needs to get better. It's like, sure. But the vast majority of these guys improve by playing. And when your biggest issue is, man, you just need to let the game slow down. You need to process a little faster and see the floor a little better. You're not going to do that by sitting at the end of the bench for 3 years, and it ruins your development. It ruins the kid's pathway. And I think it's just a symptom of the demands from these teams and these coaches. I don't think the coach is in the wrong for necessarily not, wasting games and potentially chalking up losses to accommodate that. But now with NIL, these guys can go back, get paid, and develop in a more conducive environment for that, where they're able to play, they're able to learn through their mistakes and not have it ruin their basketball career.
Hell yeah. I love that. Just speaking of shooting, I know this is the prospect that our guy Mike Walton up there loves. He actually put me on game to this guy. Like we talked about before the show too, it's so hard to gauge where we're going to go in the draft now. With AK, he was starting to pick those toolsy forwards, but like our guy Noah just said, like with Leonard Miller here now, we also have Noah Singate coming back. You have Modest. We do have a plethora of forwards, but yeah, I still like a guy like Caleb Wilson or AJ or some of these other forwards. But when it comes to guards, how do you feel about is it Mikel Brown Jr. or Michael Brown Jr.? It's Mikel, right?
I've heard Mikel. I've heard Mikel.
Yeah. But how do you feel about him, man? Because when you talk about shooting, when Walton put me onto his game, dude, I was enamored by the tape. Like, does that transfer over to the league? I feel like it does. He seems like he has one of the most NBA-ready games of any of these dudes, like plug and play off the rip with room to grow, too. No ceilings for him, if you will.
I love him. He's so much fun. It's been tough because like his shot was pretty rough all year, just like from raw percentage standpoint. So like when you're trying to sell people on the spark plug guard from Louisville, and it's like, man, he can really space the floor, dynamic shooter, and they're like, oh well, he's shooting 29%. It's like, no, but he's not. And it's like the volume is insane. And he ended up at like 34.5% from three, but like the volume's insane. The shot difficulty is insane. The distance is insane. And then you factor in the legitimate bounce that he has getting to the rim, and the foul drawing and the toughness and the manipulative playmaking. Like, this dude is moving defenders off ball. He's looking off, making no look skip passes, getting downhill whenever he wants. Like, coming into this year, one of the big questions was, what does the at-rim finishing look like? Because it was bad in high school. The problem was that he was like 5'10" and 140 pounds soaking wet. He's now 6'5", 6'6". So in like the last 18 months, he's grown 5-6 inches, put on a ton of weight, gotten a lot stronger, has legit above the rim bounce. And we saw the free throw rate jump to 44.7 this year, which you love to see from a guy who's taken almost 15 threes per 100. I believe he was just over 60% at the rim from a field goal standpoint. So if you're only looking at the shooting numbers, you're going to be disappointed. You're not going to be enamored. If you're concerned about back injuries, that I get. Fascinated to see what the medicals come back with, because I don't love guards with back problems, but hopefully it's just growing pains. The kid can play, and he reminds me a lot of like a Tyrese Maxey with the pace that he plays at, how quickly he gets into a shot, the scoring versatility, and a lot of the playmaking stuff. So the raw numbers at Louisville were underwhelming for the hype, but like when I look at my board, I have him at 7 right now, and it feels too low.
Yeah, Brown is a guy I loved, as Guilty said there. I think pretty much similar range on my board right now. I'm pretty sure he's at 6, right behind Wagler, who I have at 5. And it's the same thing. If your game is free throws, threes, and getting to the rim, I'm going to be a fan. 3-point attempt rate through the roof, even though the percentage was crazy. A lot of high difficulty shots. His 45-point game, obviously everyone was a fan, but that's where it's like, okay, this guy can really get hot from 3-point range.
Yeah.
Just to kind of add some negativity, because he's a prospect I do love. Where I do worry is he again, I hate comparisons, but just I'm a Bulls fan. I think of it. I think of everything through that lens. He reminds me of Kobe White in a sense, where I just do see an explosive offensive focus 2 guard, where it's like Defensively, I'm not sure where I'm working with. He doesn't have the same issue as Kobe, I don't think, where I believe Brown's wingspan. I think he has a plus wingspan. I'm not positive on that.
I believe so.
Okay, so like I think there is some room for him to grow defensively, but I do worry that he's so reliant on the jump shot that at the next level you're just looking at a streaky shooter. So he is someone where I kind of wish there was more consistency. In an ideal world, I almost would love to see what year 2 Louisville Mikel Brown looks like. I know in today's client we'll never get that type of thing, but yeah, he's one of those players where I'm very interested. I just think the top end outcome is so interesting where I would take him. But I will be honest, defensively, I'm worried that you could take a swing and be in a lot of trouble there, depending on how high you take him.
Yeah, the defense is bad, but he's got a little more range than some of these other guards. He's got a little more vertical explosiveness to his game. So like you'll see him challenge guys at the rim in transition, which you love. And he's really aggressive jumping passing lanes. Doesn't always pay off. Like the screen navigation isn't good. The consistent off-ball awareness isn't good. The defense needs a lot of work. And you said obviously through a Bulls lens. I know it was a very short sample size, but there are also some like Anthony Simons vibes to his game where if he doesn't hit the all NBA upside of a Tyrese Maxey, it's like, all right, well maybe like an Anthony Simons, Kobe White is kind of the more toolsy spark plug off the bench type of guard, fringe starter that he ends up being. I think the big differentiator though with those two guys for me, I think Brown's playmaking at this standpoint compared to those other guys is light years ahead with its creativity, the accuracy, and the manipulation of defenders.
Yeah, for me, like that was my favorite. Like when you bring up guys like Kobe White and Anthony Simons, that's what intrigues me the most about is Brown is that the length. Like he has long arms, and like that was always a thing with Kobe for me is he had those T-Rex arms, man. Like the dude, he had the heart and hustle of anybody, but like the length was the problem. So like that's what intrigues me the most with Brown is he looks like he has a legitimate length. Like he might still keep growing. I don't know how that works at that age, but he's just long and he's explosive. So he really gets me excited. We have this dude. So Floyd to Louisville. So that'd be fun if he came back. But yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. Mike, it's one of those things where you could be excited about him going back for a second year, but I don't think he's going back, man. I think he's coming to the league, dog.
He's going pro.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to ask, we're just looking at other prospects that could sort of come to the Bulls, depending if they stick to that 9-10 range. Just moving down a little bit, you mentioned Thomas Hall from Florida, who I don't know a ton about. If the Bulls were to get that Portland pick and they pick up an extra pick in that 15 to 16, who are some of the names on your board in that range that you think would be interesting to look at?
Yeah, and we talked about him earlier. I think swinging on Ament makes a lot of sense there. Mara and Merez in that range, Yaxel in that range makes a lot of sense. Dalen Swain, I really like in that range. Let's see, who haven't we talked about? Man, it gets so murky after. Cam Carr, wing from Baylor, I think is really interesting in that range. I haven't been able to get a firm kind of grasp of where NBA teams are with him. I've heard late first, I've heard late lottery, so there's just a casual like 20 pick gap there. But from an athleticism standpoint, a ranginess, a shooting standpoint, he rocks and he plays with an FU attitude. Insane wingspan. He's skinny, but the dude has serious bounce. Really good challenging guys from the weak side as a rim protector, jumping passing lanes, and he is not shy about letting it fly. So he might be a little bit of a reach, but I mean, like once you get into that mid first round, just go get your guy. And if you're looking for an athletic, dynamic, defensive playmaking floor spacer, there aren't many better in this class than Cam Carr. Like kind of balancing out him, Mullins, Isaiah Evans has been a really tricky kind of battle for me all year, but all Cam Carr has done this year is knock down threes and produce on the defensive end. So he's really, really fun.
Absolutely.
I do want to shift one more time just back up to the top because I am curious where you have Darius Acuff on your board. We get a lot of conversations about can the Bulls coexist, drafting another true point guard next to Josh Giddey. You know, Giddey's complimentary. He's going to shoot off-ball threes. He doesn't have a crazy usage rate. He can share. But Acuff is the most, I think, interesting by far if Chicago is to take him in terms of what does that even look like? What does that mean? I think we all know people who are high on Acuff think offensively the ceiling's insane. It feels interesting to me because everyone seems pretty low on him defensively because I guess how could you be sort of any other way on him? I am curious, where is he on your board? And then in terms of Chicago specifically, is there any world where you see some sort of lineup, I guess a backcourt, so to speak, with Acuff and Giddey working in your head in any way? I'm just curious what you think of that.
I have Acuff at 5. But I'm constant. It's a game of musical chairs with those top 5 guards for me, where it's like tomorrow Acuff could be 8, and I just I constantly hate it, and whatever order I end up with, it's going to be wrong. So really excited for that outcome. But what he did on offense this year, it's kind of undeniable. And the playmaking, the ball security, and the growth as a shooter was just insane. I did not buy him as a shooter at all in high school. He'd have a couple games here and there where he'd go off and torch defenders, including Cam Boozer. But it was so streaky. Like there was no off-ball activity from him. Once he gave the ball up after over dribbling for 20 seconds, he just kind of stood there. It's like, man, I do not love this from a 6'2", 6'3" guard in shoes. But what he showed at Arkansas this year was insane playmaking volume and efficiency. And when you have an assist rate over 30 and a turnover rate sub 12 with usage burgeoning on 30, that's insane. And then on top of that, he's shooting 44% from 3 on almost 10 attempts a game, or 10 attempts per 100. The offensive stuff with him is just kind of undeniable at this point. Defensively, though, it's abysmal. Screen navigation isn't there. Off-ball awareness isn't there. There's no defensive playmaking from him. It's a real bummer. Hopefully, I know I've said this with a lot of guys, but hopefully with a little less of a offensive creation role, he's able to divert a little more energy there. But I just kind of don't ever expect him to be a great defender because I don't think the instincts, the fundamentals are there at this point. The key, though, is do they need to be? And what he did on offense, probably not. With the Bulls, among the guards, that would probably feel like the most, all right, let's tear it down completely and rebuild around this guy pick. He improved a ton as an off-ball player on offense. Like Arkansas, as the year was going on, they were starting to like run some sets, running him off screens to hit movement stuff off the catch, where it's like, where did that come from? Haven't seen you ever do that before, but I like it. But you don't really want to take the ball out of his hands. And do you trust Giddey to play without the ball consistently? Personally, I don't. I know the shot has improved, but I don't think it's to a point where you really trust him consistently spotting up. The pace that they could play at would be really fun, but I think you would just kind of water down what both of those guys are best at. And it'd feel like if they did swing on Acuff, it'd feel like the most, all right, everyone's for sale. We're really, really restarting this thing, and we're building around this guy.
Facts. Kurtz, I know how you feel about Acuff. So you want to go ahead and cook for that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love Acuff a lot. I think he's, like you said, the guy where if you were to draft him in Chicago, I think it would mean moving on from Josh Giddey, particularly if another regime came in and took over the front office who didn't bring Giddey in. Like, if you wanted to build around Acuff, I wouldn't be mad at it at all. I think he's a fantastic player offensively, can do everything on that side of the ball. He can shoot off ball. He can shoot on ball, get to the cup. The playmaking is incredible. He's one of the best lob passers I've seen in a long time. Like, that really pops, especially with how athletic Arkansas was. So I really have no qualms with Acuff, honestly. I would take him anywhere in this draft, truly. I think you could even group him in with that first 4 if it weren't for the small point guard being less valuable in the modern NBA. And by small, I mean 6'3", which was pretty average point guard I had about 6 years ago. So I don't really know what happened there. But,
I mean, I think my favorite part of Acuff in Chicago would be that it kind of gives you that 2-year window that you know is built in anyway, where they're gonna not be good next season, and it kind of gives you that entire sort of at least up to the trade deadline to evaluate between Acuff and Giddey. Because again, there is a world where maybe you find some sort of weird synergy there offensively, and you just focus on really nailing down that center spot. I think there is a weird scenario where maybe everyone's so obsessed with the size, Acuff falls to 9, and then the Bulls get that Portland pick, and maybe you do a little Acuff Mara. You overcompensate, you get the smaller point guard, then you get the 7'3" guy a little later on, and get ready to learn drop coverage. So there is a world where I think you can maybe cook with Acuff in Chicago. And Giddey, I do buy him being an off-ball player. I just think it's not going to be very fun. It is a little, it's a lot of stand in the corner. A lot of go get the rebound if you can, but I think in a perfect world, that's kind of what you almost want Giddey to trend towards. That's why Acuff is starting to fascinate me more in Chicago specifically. And maybe it's just the fact that he feels like he brings a lot of Derrick Rose-ish energy that I would love seeing in a Bulls jersey again. But sorry, Luke, I feel like I cut you off there. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was actually so I've watched a lot of Acuff and a lot of Arkansas games because I just love watching Calipari basketball teams. I think he's a great coach, one of the best. And a guy that kept popping up off the screen to me, aside from Acuff, and is maybe a guy that we can get with our early second-round pick, or if the Portland pick conveys, is Malik Thomas. Malik Thomas is, he's every bit the athlete you want him to be. He shoots the hell out of the ball. He can be that on-ball scorer, go get you a bucket when you need it. The defensive instincts seem to be there, but I've seen almost nothing about this guy, and I think that's just a testament to how deep this draft class really is, because I feel like in every other draft you'd be talking about that guy in the lottery. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts were, Metcalf, on where he might fall or like where he projects to be.
I've really struggled with Malik because like stylistically, he's the type of guard that I typically just steer away from entirely. I didn't love the decision making with him early in the year. A lot of over dribbling. Like anytime he tried to create anything, it was always minimum like 7 dribbles. I was like, all right, well, let's get off the ball and do something a little quicker here. But he got so much better from start to finish this year. And you mentioned the defensive stuff. Like he's not a good defender yet, but he tries. Like he works really, really hard on that end of the floor. He is super competitive, like takes real pride in trying to defend. And at a minimum, you can work with that. Like you can get that to at least league average guard defender, because he's got an awesome work rate. He's really tough. He's still a little skinny, but needs to bulk up. When I saw him at Nike Hoop Summit last year when he was with the Portland Generals. So he wasn't there for all the practices, but for a couple of the scrimmages. Really good frame on him. Like he was going at the guys that they were scrimmaging against, like talking his talk. And then on the offensive end, like the off-ball shooting with him was nasty this year. If you're trying to play him as a combo guard, as a potential point guard, I think you're going to be really disappointed. That's not his game. But as a secondary creator, bucket getter, there's a lot of really fun stuff there. And we saw how quickly the decision-making and the processing speed improved throughout this year. So I'm with you. I've really turned a corner with him. I've really started to enjoy more and more about his game, especially that last 2 months of the season. Like if you're looking to go back and watch film and like fall in love with the guy, he's pretty easy to fall in love with, because he'll give you buckets. He'll fight on the defensive end, and occasionally a couple games, there's some really nice passing reads as that secondary off-ball guy. So I still don't know what he does in terms of staying or going. I'd be fascinated to see if he ends up returning to Arkansas. Him and Billy Richmond and Jordan Smith next year, like they're gonna be nasty. They're gonna be real fun. But if he's like, hey, like I'm getting mostly first round grades, I just want to go pro, I kind of get it. And late lottery would still be a little rich for me. But once you get into like the 20s or something, then I'm like, well, why not? Because the upside with this dude is really nasty.
And he's an overtime elite guy, if I'm correct about that. I mean, that might mean a jump to the pros. He might not like school that much.
Yo, Metcalf, speaking of him, Billy Richmond, I've been enamored because I remember I came across him on your guys' page. Do you think he goes to the NBA this year? And if so, like we're late first, or is he like a second round kind of guy? Because I would love that dude here.
I would take him late first. The NBA people I've talked to say they love him. I'd be shocked if he stays in the draft. I bet he goes back to Arkansas.
He's a sicko.
He is an absolute psychopath in the best way possible. I love him so
Yeah,
much.
same. Dude, he gets me juice. He reminds me of like kind of like a Javonte Green kind of a motor, but just with more offensive juice to his game. He's a definition of a spark plug energy dude. He's tenacious.
And like some real passing stuff with him too.
Yes. How do you feel about, speaking of that, like tenacious, how do you feel about a dude like Colin Carr? That's another guy for me. Like I heard that the NFL is even reaching out to him. And is he like a dude that goes undrafted, or is he like a second round kind of a guy?
He's a dude who's going to be playing at Michigan State as long as he possibly can.
Uh,
Like freak athlete. He's gotten a
Yes.
lot better doing a lot of the little things, but the offense is still such a question mark where you
Okay.
don't trust him as a shooter. In transition, throwing lobs, he's insane. The defense got a lot better. I love that NFL teams are like,
Yeah, the Bears.
let's line this
Bears,
dude up on the outside and just throw him go balls. Why not?
Yeah. Facts. Mike, you see Brums is asking about your guy Heinz
Steinbach.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah, he's a guy I'm almost like so sad about moving him down that I haven't like talked about him as much. But he's a guy I just loved like his energy from the beginning. I'm like, this kid seems like a psychopath on the offensive glass. Always love those type of players. My issue with him is I loved him when I thought this is an NBA center who's gonna just attack the offensive glass. I kind of start to struggle with that, where I feel like defensively, maybe he's a combo like 4 or 5 who plays a little bit of 5, but mostly as a 4, which makes me like his game a lot less at the NBA level. I did feel like I saw a little bit of projection 3-point shot wise. I think maybe he shot like in the low to mid 30s on threes on low volume. So, I mean, I guess I will talk about him in the sense that what do you see as an NBA role for him? And then do you buy the shot? Is there something there? Or was that just him trying to like desperately give NBA scouts something to hang on to?
I really wanted to love him coming into the year. I did, because like the rebounding is insane, just like historically good rebounding on both ends of the floor, which is a skill that we constantly see translate every single level. The guys scale up, so it's like, all right, well, at a minimum in the NBA, he's going to be an awesome rebounder. But it's like you were saying, like what else is there? And there are flashes of some fun passing reads, but nothing consistent enough to hang your hat on. There are flashes of some pick and pop stuff, but he'll knock down one and then the next 3 don't even hit the rim. So it's like, okay, well, I get the intrigue, I get the potential, but then on defense, where it's like, I think positionally he's fine on that end, but he's not super explosive. He's not the quickest guy. That kind of combo tweener 4-5, like you were saying, is where I get hung up with him. So he's got an elite skill, and at the end of the day, that does wonders for your draft stock. And at a minimum, he's probably a first round guy. But the potential lottery stuff that we're hoping for coming into the year, I don't think we saw enough growth, especially on the offensive end, for that to be that realistic. Obviously it only takes one team, but I think he's looking like more of a late first round guy who's got some really high level, backup big kind of upside with him.
And he is a guy who I still think, like, at least maybe it's me just wishful thinking, but I think projects to be a lot better than he would a lot of places in Chicago. Just because I do think where someone said, I think it was Brum said Washington did him no favors to his game with who he was playing with. Josh Giddey naturally would spoon feed him looks to the point where I think, maybe you see a little bit more jump shot wise from Steinbach because Giddey's just giving him nice pocket passes. So, I do like to say to people, Giddey is out there getting 15 assists. And he's diming up Gershon Yabusele and Leonard Miller. He's not playing with the Showtime Lakers. So if you're going to try offensively, I do think Giddey can really open up some things for you. So I'm optimistic about his chances in Chicago. But yeah, we're kind of on the same page, Metcalf. Where I just think if he is a 4, it's a lot tougher to project what are you going to do with him when there are so many great 4s who can scale up comfortably defensively. That's kind of what's in vogue. I just think it's going to be tough for my guy Steinbach, but he's still just like a mint on my list of players I love. I'm just not sure everyone else is going to love him as much as I do, but I still got hopes for Hans. So.
Absolutely. He's kind of like if Steven Adams was 6'10", which is tough. And he's not as strong as Steven Adams because I don't think anyone in the world is as strong as Steven Adams. But like kind of impact wise, that's what it is. And at 6'9", 6'10", that's a heck of a lot less impactful than at 7 feet.
Yeah, and
If
as
we
Brum
can-
said, Billy has Nick Richards taking a couple threes a game, so he definitely would be having him expand his shot profile a little bit.
So another forward that I've been following a lot, and is probably like of all the guys in the draft outside of Caleb Wilson, he's probably like the biggest my guy, is Chris Sakh out of Houston. And obviously he was a really highly touted freshman recruit, decided to go to Houston where he was going to be more of a role player. And I think that was really good for his development. And I do think, even though Steinbach's got some great numbers, I've never seen a guy go to the glass as hard as Chris Sakh does. And it's just because he's got so much verticality as well. And I think he's a forward who has floor spacing potential and some defensive upside as well. I remember Houston had him guarding DeBansta in the BYU game, and I was like, what is this guy doing right now? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on one of my guys in the draft, Chris Sakh, if you would be happy to share him.
He's really frustrating because, like, you see the flashes, you see the tools, you see the person and how coachable he is, and how he's just getting reamed out on the sidelines after missing a rotation or something. And it's head up, he's nodding, he's engaged, like he's getting coached and wants to get coached and wants to get better. And it's like, all right, well, how do you not buy in on this dude? And then you look at the production, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, and then you look at the missed rotation, it's like, oh, okay, he's just really raw still. So I love him. I think he's a guy who's going to work out really, really well. I think he's a guy who's going to interview incredibly well, because everything that we've seen in person, everything that we've heard about, everything we've seen in interviews and written pieces about him, it's like this dude wants to be challenged. He wants to put the work in. He wants to get better. And he's not afraid of being coached hard. And those types of dudes, coaches and execs, fall in love with. And if things really start falling into place, he could be one of the biggest lottery ticket home run swings in this draft. I fully buy the shooting. Like, I think he's legit going to shoot it. He's an awesome rebounder, like you said. The passing needs to get a lot better. He's never going to be someone who's out there creating his own shot or anything. And then defensively, just for how springy he is, for how big he is, the shot blocking numbers were just nowhere where they needed to be. And that's going back to high school too. So he's always been really underwhelming as that defensive playmaker, which I kind of expected at a minimum we'd get a lot more of at Houston this year, especially with JoJo Tugler kind of running around like a madman and free up Sakh to be a little more roamy as that low man, rotate over a little more aggressively. And he just never really hit the ground running with that kind of stuff. So he's really raw. He's a type of guy where it's probably going to take a year or two until we start seeing consistent minutes and impact from him. But if you're betting on the person and not who the player is today, I think he's one of the top guys for that, because a couple things fall into place as we hope they do. He's going to be a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. And someone else hopped in the chat and said, have we talked about Kingston Flemings yet? And I feel like we haven't really touched on him too much. We talked about him a little bit with the Wagler group, but just because we were sticking with Houston, figured maybe you could touch on where he is in your bunch of guards at the top of the draft.
Currently at 9 for me, but it's Acuff, Wagler, Mikel, Burries, Flemings, like back to back. So a whole lot of fluidity there. Kingston's fun. He's a walking paint touch, gets downhill whenever he wants, really good scoring touch around the rim on floaters in the mid-range, just nasty pull-up game because he gets defenders turned in the blink of an eye, and now they're in panic mode retreating, and he just stops on a dime, rises up for a little 12-foot jumper. It's money so often. And when he's collapsing the defense and forcing those rotations, he also has some of the best vision on like those skip passes out of drives, finding those weak side shooters, finding the lob threat, roaming over from the opposite side dunker spot. Really good, dynamic, efficient playmaker, which when you're pairing that with this rim pressure, it's fun. I think the shot still needs a lot of work. Like the raw numbers are solid, 38.7% from 3 this year, but volume was pretty low from where you would expect, especially when you look at guys like Acuff and Wagler. So the shot needs a lot of work. The off-ball offense needs a lot of work. He was in a really, really favorable position where when he didn't have it going, he was able to kind of hand the reins over to Uzan really veteran point guard who could kind of steer the ship instead. But then defensively with those top guards, Flemings might be the best with how active his hands are, how many deflections he causes, how many steals he gets. So he's really, really fun. It's like, is he Darren Fox up? Like we're talking 90th high tier outcomes. It's like Darren Fox kind of, I've been going with DeJounte Murray, San Antonio Spurs, DeJounte Murray recently. So if he hits, he's going to be a really good player. But I still think there's a lot more work that we need to see from the shot than the numbers might suggest.
And I feel like Flemings is a guy I need to like do a deeper dive and watch more of because he's someone where I struggle with. I think he's definitely going to be behind Wagler for me as well. You know, that, like you said, that group Brown probably behind Acuff. Where I struggle with him is defensively. I love everything I see. Offensively, I feel like it's like Flemings is a good shooter, but again, I'd just love to see you take more. And I wasn't sure if that was a result of how Houston was playing offense, the guys he was playing with. Maybe there wasn't enough, floor space to sort of dictate that. So I was just interested in the 3-point attempt rate with him. Is that going to translate? Because defensively, I don't think Flemings will have an issue, but I always do like to think about the worst case scenario. And I'm thinking if he can't get those mid-range shots, if he can't create getting downhill at the NBA level, is he really a shooter? Because then if he's not doing anything offensively, are you just talking about a great defensive change of pace guard that you're taking now in the lottery? So he's a guy where I'm really struggling to make sure I'm understanding how his offense translates to the next level. Because again, if I don't buy the shot, it starts to make me doubt everything else, and it's kind of tough to go from there. But the production says otherwise, sort of, so it's tough.
No, I'm with you on the attempt rate because it's so much lower than you would think. Because like when you watch him, you're like, God, this guy's knocking down pull-up jumpers everywhere, but it's all in like that 15-foot range. And at the next level, NBA teams are going to dare him to punish them from outside. Every pick and roll, they're going to go under until he proves that they can't. So I'm right there with you. Corey got to see him in person. Was not a fan of the shot. Was not a fan of the shooting mechanics. From three specifically. So, and the indicators are good. Like the mid-range touch is really good. The free throw numbers are good, but the volume from outside is a little troubling. And I wasn't lucky enough to see him in person, so I can't attest to the mechanics. Just relaying secondhand stories, but I'm right there with you, Mike. The volume is the big concern, and then you can kind of go into this death spiral of like, oh well, if he's not shooting from outside, then he won't be guarded, and then he can't get downhill, and then he's not scoring at the rim, and then he's not getting to the line, then he's not creating for others, and you just kind of panic. So I definitely get it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, again, if you're defending him by going under the screen in Chicago specifically, kind of the main thing Giddey's been fighting his entire career is everyone's going under the screen. So if you got two guys where, again, everyone's just going under, I fear Matas Buzelis our sweet young boy will never see a dunk again in his life if that's how the defenses are guarding us. So yeah, Flemings is a guy I really would love to see individual workouts with Flemings.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy where I am curious, like again, in a gym alone, is he just shooting the lights out from deep? Because as you touched on with Corey, seeing him live, if he can prove that shot is going to look a lot different at the NBA level, kind of like with Buzelis, people really didn't project him to be a shooter at the next level. And now you say him taking 10 threes a game regularly. So I just love to see some progress there. But the fact that it's such little nitpicky things, I feel like with this guard class tells me how much I love this group, honestly.
It's really frustrating because I look at my board and I see 6 guards in like my top 12. And it's like, oh, that's not going to work. This can't work. But then you look at the wings. It's like, all right, well, I don't. This is how the season went. Like I don't know who else. Like I'm intrigued by Dalen Swain. I'm intrigued by some of these guys, but I'm not putting them over Burries or Wagler or Acuff or like I'd just be doing it to do it. So it's a constant battle or internal battle, at least for me.
Yes, sir. We've had 2 questions here. So I got Gavin. He said you might have already touched on this, but who's your favorite undrafted free agent guy or favorite undrafted free agent fit for the Bulls? And it kind of ties into this question as well as, I'm so confused on who the Bucks take if Giannis is staying. If they jump us, do they snag yet? So I guess we'll go with the undrafted free agent question first.
Oh man, and this is messy because like we're still in withdrawal and transfer portal and decision period. So I'm kind of looking at guys who might be in. this is a guy that might end up being a second rounder, but his backup center on Virginia this year, Ugano Onyenso, really awesome defender, rim protector, lob threat, really low maintenance kind of guy. Like insane shot blocking numbers this year, improved a ton. I think he even started spacing the floor a little bit. So I like him late second, potentially undrafted, depending on what this withdrawal deadline looks like. Man, this is gross. It just gets really messy. And a couple guards that I'm a lot higher on than others, like off-ball, low maintenance guys. I love Seth Trimble from North Carolina, and similar vein, but Lamar Wilkerson from Indiana, really good defender, really good shooter. Does he give you much more? Probably not. But as a rotation guard, I really like those guys.
Nice.
Wilkerson had some crazy high-scoring games this year for Indiana. Some crazy high-scoring games.
He had a couple, or at least 140 ball, and a couple that were flirting with it.
And then that center, the backup center you mentioned from Virginia. What was his name again? It was
Ugana Onyenso.
I feel like I lightly remember him just because of Duke having like 7 blocks or something monster in a game against them. He was something else, and he was a guy in Chicago specifically. Could honestly play 15 minutes right now just for what they need in terms of a shot blocker.
Yeah, he had a block rate of like 17.5 this year. So, yeah. and he was like a former big time recruit. He was at Kentucky for a couple of years, never really found his footing. Minute share, wasn't astronomical this year. He's not going to do much offensive creation or anything like that, just pure play finishing and shot blocking. But like as a backup third string big fan.
A guy who might be in this sort of territory of maybe late second undrafted free agent, Peyton Sanford from Nebraska. I remember I threw the first Nebraska Iowa or Illinois game on early in the year, and I think he shot. It was one of the most incredible shooting performances I've ever seen in my entire life. And he does a lot of the little things. He rebounds really well. He seems to hustle a little bit. Do you see a guy like that maybe being a draft riser, maybe going early second round, or you see him more being towards that back half undrafted free agent status?
So everything I've heard is that he's like 100% set on going back to Nebraska next year. But I love his game, like nasty off-ball shooter who can also attack closeouts, big dude, real movement stuff with him. So I as a second rounder, if I was an NBA team, I would have tried to, maybe convince him to stay in and grab him with one of those early second round priority picks. But yeah, it seems like everything I've heard from his side is that he's dead set on going back to Nebraska, but going into next year, he might be one of those sneaky late first round guys who really climbs.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know he had an extra year of eligibility. I thought he was up after his time at Iowa too.
And then this question right here. So who do we think reaches and snags a wing in the top 10?
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. That's you just dropped a bomb, Brums.
And who knows what Sacramento is ever going to do. Atlanta, that kind of seems to be their bread and butter to, grab those rangy 6'7" to 6'10" type of guys. Especially if they're like, hey, this Nickeil Alexander-Walker dude is pretty good. I miss him. But yeah, and he's been insane this year.
We almost had him. That's what they say. They say AK was going to get him before we got a Coro. That would have, man, what a different trajectory
that's a fun trade-off.
Yeah, right?
And I was going to say, we know exactly what the Kings are going to do. They're going to do whatever the Chicago Bulls are going to do. That's what the Kings are going to do.
Well, you guys will just draft them and, swap players at the deadline. It's fine.
Jesus.
And then otherwise, maybe Memphis. And Memphis or Atlanta would probably be the top 2 I would look at there. It'll be interesting to see if Atlanta goes with or potentially reaches on a big if they don't jump up a ton either, because for some reason they just never seem to be in love with Okongwu.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything is reaching for Brooklyn, but if they like any of the 1,000 guards they drafted last year, I guess, wing would be a novel move for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the good point. It said it's so hard to anticipate who the Bulls might look at in the draft for a new front office coming in. Yeah, like we talked about before we started the show, I have no idea which direction that we go in, but like that's the beauty about this class. It's like you damn near can't go wrong in the top 10 itself. You know what I mean? And on top of us having that second pick, hopefully we're looking at you, Portland. But yeah, it's hard to gauge, man. But I just feel like we can't go wrong here.
And actually, I'm glad you said it can't go wrong, because it can always go wrong, and that kind of leads me to something I was dying to ask Metcalf. I've like one of my good buddies. I mentioned him pretty much like every single episode. He's a comedian in Chicago, Peter Bonello, diehard Bulls fan. He always talks to the next class about me like super early when I've done no research, and he's like, I'm like, man, I'm so in love with this 2026 class, and he's like, oh, well, you better cherish it because I hear 2027 class is awful. And I'm like, what? Like, I've heard none of that. So I want to go straight to the source itself, to you, Tyler. In anticipation for the Bulls being bad next year, should I already be worried about the 2027 class, or am I right? Or is this the classic every year we do this? There's always going to be someone good from every class. Obviously, I know Stokes at the top. I'm assuming a lot of people maybe aren't in love with his game and what he does, so that's where a lot of this chatter is coming from. But just in a general whole entire class sense, how do you feel about the 2027 group?
Yeah, I've referenced that it's a bad class offhand, or what I try and couch it as is like it's projected to be a bad class, because then I can give myself at least a little wiggle room to get out of that. And I think the key there though is in comparison to the last couple classes we've had, which have kind of been insane. Like we've been on a run here of just monster talents, especially at the top of at the top of these drafts, and that's just not the norm. We've gotten spoiled lately, and I think next year a lot of people are calling it a bad class or a weak class, and I think it's just going to be kind of like a normal class, where there's like one or two guys who emerge as like clear front runners for that top pick, and then there's a lot of question marks. Like I think we're going to see a little more diversity and versatility in terms of boards and what evaluators are looking at and valuing, and who they love and who they're who's capturing their hearts. I don't think there is that clear cut guy, because like Tyron Stokes, like the physical tools and the ball skills, and if he really locks in and commits to it, like there is some nasty outcomes. Like the kid is good. There are a lot of questions though, with a lot going on around him. But even guys like Jordan Smith, I love him going to Arkansas. Corey and Albert were out at Hoop Summit this week. And they're like, man, these guys are good. And like, they're playing hard. Like Caleb Holt looked awesome. Brandon McCoy looks like just one of the nastiest defenders in the country. Apparently can't shoot, which is tough, but like, there's a lot of really good stuff. And every year there's always talent. You just kind of have to find it. And sometimes they make it easy. Like the 2026 class is done, and sometimes it's a little more difficult, and you kind of have to dig a little deeper than you might hope for.
Yeah. And as a Duke fan, I always like to look up whoever they have and be like, give me a second. No, this class isn't bad. You guys haven't heard of Cameron Williams? After I did a quick Google search. Like, come on, guys. The second coming of Chris Bosh. Like, yeah.
He's a good player. Like 6'11", can space the floor. Like, there's stuff to work with. And Duran Rippey, really, really fun point guard coming in for Duke next year too. So, yeah, like there'll be talent. Someone's going to emerge. And even a guy like Jason Crow going to Missouri, he in that McDonald's All-American game, he was a monster. So they're going to be good players.
Yeah,
I think it's one of those things where maybe a lot of outcomes are a high-end starter rather than all-star, which again, you can't function if you don't have a lot of those guys as well. So not the worst outcome, but it is tough for the Bulls to maybe go on a 2-year run of tanking during that stretch. Then I can understand where the frustrations would come from, but hopefully they get lucky.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike. Well, yeah, did you guys have like any specific question you want to ask Tyler? Let him get out of here. It's almost been 2 hours. Time flies when you're spitting ball.
Nah, man, I'm just really excited you hopped on. I'm really excited for this one to make sure we can get it back out there once it's done, because I saw in the chat so many people literally right after the discussion came and was like, oh, did they talk about Braden Burries after we talked about Burries? And after a ton of Keaton Wagler talk, did they talk about Wagler? So there are people who are going to love the breakdowns we had in this episode. So I just wanted to say thanks to Metcalf for jumping on. I was scared we would get no one from No Ceilings to make any time because you guys are kind of balls to the wall at this time of the year doing so much with evaluations and boards. So I just appreciate you making the time, man.
Yeah, of course. Always happy to talk hoops, and I know there's a lot of back and forth, so apologies for any frustrations there. But
no, man. Congrats to you on the new time of the year.
Yeah, and they're needy, dude. Holy cow. Babies do not function well on their own, apparently.
I hear you, man. Yeah, I think we talked to Rucker on the group chat, and he said he's going to come on like during the week, and then hopefully we can do something like during the summer after the draft where we have you and Rucker together with us. So that'll be really cool.
Yeah, we'll make sure to figure something out.
Yeah, it'll be a whole different conversation after we see who we actually get, who the front office is, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what we'll
Could
see
have 4 picks coming in.
Yo,
could have 4 of them.
Hopefully, man. But yeah, thank you so much, Metcalf, man, and just shout out to your brand, man. Shout out to you. Like I said, like anytime I'm watching anything draft, it's no ceilings. You know, like you guys have just. I'm trying not to swear here, but. Dude, I can't. There's no other way to put it. Just the most badass like presentation style to me. Like it gets me juiced when every video starts off with the fire in the background and that song that comes in.
Hit the music.
Dude, it's hard. It's hard. So it was an honor having you on today, man. I'm always watching your stuff. And yeah, this was great. I learned a lot watching and just listening to you today.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm literally about to go listen to the Isaiah Evans deep dive as soon as I get off of here because I have been dying for it as a Duke fan. I'm like, here we go. I need to hear why he will be so successful in the NBA. I love him. So please, if you're watching this right now, go check out some No Ceilings content because it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Metcalf, and like I said, hopefully we'll see you. We'll see you in the summer, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Metcalf.
Thanks,
cheers,
man.
brother.